Hey guys, welcome to the first video I'm making on my new game project. This is going to become a series of update videos on this channel, and in this one I'm going to show you where the game is now and also show a little bit of how the game has developed over the 3 months I've spent making it so far. So a little context as to the inspiration of this game. In May I saw a GDC talk for a short hike, and that inspired me to drop a much bigger project and work on something a bit smaller and more achievable. I've always been a fan of puzzle games. Pushmo, Island Milo, Monument Valley, I really like these simple projects that iterate very smartly on their main mechanic, and that made me want to try and make my own. So I pulled up this very old concept that I made just in Paint and kind of discarded a long time ago, and decided that I was going to work with that. So expanding my concept, I ended up with this relaxed puzzle platformer where you sail around in search of islands to climb and try and reach their summit flags. And each island is a movement puzzle that you have to work out in order to reach the top. The main mechanic of the game is this tree chopping, and you use that in intelligent ways to create paths for yourself. I'm not really sure what's a good reference point for what the mechanics are inspired by or what the game kind of gives. I know a short hike kind of inspired me to make it a bit more explorative. Originally it was going to be like, do a level, teleport to the next level, do that, next level, etc. But then I kind of decided to make it more of an open world and give more space between these puzzles, so it felt a bit more complete, a bit more like an experience. But as for the tree chopping and the climbing mountains, I think Pushmo is a good example of how puzzly I'm hoping to go. But definitely the emphasis is more on puzzle than on exploration, I'd say. This little island that we're on right now is kind of a sandbox area for me, where I've been testing code and like the aesthetics of things. So let's take a look at some puzzles. This is the first puzzle in the game, which I guess encourages you to think a little bit more outside the box with trees. Yes, they can be used as ramps and bridges, but taking it just one step further, this is an example of where a player would have to use multiple trees for the solution. So first thing, you have to chop down this tree in order to create a bridge, and after that you can create the ramp using this tree. So it's nothing crazy yet, but I think it's important to have this puzzle to show that the solutions are not always linear and you have to be a little bit more creative. As for what's next for the puzzles, it needs to expand out from the main mechanic, which is chopping down trees. So I've already added that you can plant trees using seeds, so that allows you to change up their position. And I've added the trees knock down other trees, so that gives you like a proxy chop of sort. You can chop them down from a position that's far away. And I also want to add the ability to roll trees once they're chopped, so you can roll them left or right. That gives you more options based on the direction that they fell and their original placement. And then the big exciting thing that I'm going to add is introduction of special trees that do different things. So for instance, right now everything in the scene is a basic tree, which means that it doesn't have any effect when you chop it down. But I have plans to add a tree whose foliage is a bounce pad, and I'm going to add a tree that explodes and clears the area that it lands in. Those are two that are 100% in the works, and then there's a bunch more, but I'm still working out those. And I think that's going to add a lot of exciting variation to the puzzles. This area here is a little step up from the last island. Still one of the simpler puzzles, just with basic trees, but I'm interested to know if you can work out a solution here. I'm going to show the solution later in the video. But first I want to show my prototype and how I developed it into what I've got right now. So here's my prototype, here's what I started with. When I did begin this project, I told myself that I wasn't going to do any concept art just because it's very easy to get stuck in that stage and waste a lot of time and momentum. So when I started, I decided that I was just going to use a Pinterest and just collect references of things that I liked. And that went for characters and levels. I knew roughly that I wanted to do some sort of tree chopping animal, and it started off as a woodpecker. And at this point I thought that I wanted to make my levels a lot more compact, and maybe the whole island fits on one screen was the original plan. So I went for something like this originally. I used a triplanar shader for the environment. I knew it was going to save me time, and I really wanted that 3-point lighting kind of effect that I'd seen in other games. That's something that stayed in the current iteration. But I managed to pull this together very quickly. I think all of this, well, quickly for me, all of this was within maybe 3 weeks. And even though this honestly doesn't look great, it's very helpful to have because it's a lot easier to evaluate this as a whole project rather than trying to make every single part perfect separately. The main issues were the aesthetic was kind of working against itself. You can see the bird looks very strange when it's pixelated, and the level also looks very lumpy. It's very hard to take that level seriously because it kind of just looks like plasticine. And the most important thing is the mechanics didn't feel good at this stage yet, so I knew that I definitely needed to put a lot more work into that. If the mechanic is fun and if just like moving around your level is enjoyable, I think it just makes the game so much better. That's something that I really prioritize. The 3 main things that changed then was I changed the character, I changed my level design, and I changed my trees. So for the character, it was just a case of the bird was raising a lot of questions for me, and it also didn't look good pixelated because it was so spindly. You would kind of expect a bird to just be able to fly to the top of a level, so it doesn't really make sense. And with a beaver, it just instantly justifies the mechanics of the game, and also opens up some new mechanics like the water mechanics that I want to include. Being able to swim, being able to dive, and use trees to change the paths of rivers. That seemed like a cool direction to take the game if I wanted to, and a beaver leaves that opportunity open. For the levels, it just needed to be something more structural, I think. So I looked at games like Captain Toad and other games that have a 3D but kind of blocky aesthetic. I think that works for feeling more robust, and it makes you take the level a bit more seriously. The last thing that I need to add for every island is something unique. So each island has something, a key feature that none of the other islands have, and at that point I think it'll be in a really good position. Making the trees look good is the main task for me. So like I said before, it has to be fun just to chop down, and they need to look good as well because they make up the majority of the scene. So I experimented with a few different styles of foliage. Originally I wanted to have this kind of X-ray view where you can see the full tree inside of the foliage, but it just ended up looking weird, and I wasn't really sure how to tackle it as well. Originally what I did was I just inverted the normals so that you can see the tree behind, but then you have issues of the shading has now been reversed, so the shadows are at the top. So I can write a shader that swaps them over, but it also creates an issue when the tree is not looking dead on. So if you're looking from above or the tree has fallen over, you can see here the bottom faces of the foliage are actually visible, so it kind of chops the tree there and it looks a bit strange. I didn't want to worry about that, so I avoided that. The other option was just having totally opaque foliage, but something about that didn't feel right. When the tree was falling over, like for instance, you can't tell where you don't know where you're walking, you don't know where the end of the tree is because it's totally opaque. And the character's very small as well, so he can disappear inside it. It was actually a really big issue with this game to work out how to avoid obscuring a lot of information with so much foliage everywhere, while at the same time I wanted it because it looks nice visually. And I think the middle ground that we found, for now at least, is this kind of translucent look. So you can see where the tree is. You have an idea of its hitbox, but at the same time, it doesn't look weird like the totally transparent one before, the X-ray version. Eventually, when I started showing the game to people, a lot of people were suggesting that the leaves pop off, and it kind of made sense because when trees fall on top of each other in puzzles, the foliage, even though you can see the X-ray view, it's so consuming, and it's very hard to tell where the logs are that you're trying to stand on. So eventually I was like, yeah, okay, we need to get rid of these leaves, and it was actually a good thing because it adds a bit more fun. The way that the leaves like pop off in this leaf explosion when you chop the trees, it adds that enjoyment factor of pressing the button and knocking it over. And another thing that was really important to add was the trees are a lot thicker now, and you can't fall off them when you're walking. Because it's a puzzle game, I didn't want it to be too focused on mechanics, so I'm not doing things like extreme balancing or having to do pinpoint landings and stuff. If you know the solution and you've laid out the trees in the way that is correct, you shouldn't fall off and have to restart the level. That's not really fun and enjoyable. So that's something that I'm totally avoiding. And I think those are the main things that I did between my prototype and where I'm at now. It feels like I've done a lot for this project, but at the same time, it feels like there's so much more to go. I'm just going to stick at it, keep working for now, and hopefully these updates will come out every kind of 2 weeks, I think makes sense, either a devlog or a more in-depth look at how I made something. And if you want to see something in particular, please tell me. For instance, how I made the trees, other parts of the aesthetic or coding related, just let me know with a comment. And that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. If you want to keep updated, please subscribe here or follow me on Twitter, which I'll leave below. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.